Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
All right. Hello, I'm Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have Andy Price with me here today. Andy's a scouting rock star and champion. He is currently the CEO of Grand Canyon Council and a nationally recognized thought leader among Scout executives. Welcome to the show, Andy.
Hey, thanks for having me. I look forward to talking with you today.
Excellent. So before the show, we were given a little bit of background on yourself. Could we back up and start over with that and tell me how you got into that position?
Yeah, absolutely. So originally I'm from Atlanta. As a kid, kind of grew up moving around a little bit. Dad was Navy. His last duty station was in Georgia, so high school and University of Georgia for college. Got into finance, into banking. Wasn't the right fit for me. And I remember at still 22, pretty young, and I was telling my mother, I'm going to go back to graduate school and do something differently. And she said, you're too young. You need to go work for the Boy Scouts. You were a scout growing up. You had a blast. You're an Eagle Scout. Go work for the Boy Scouts. And I said, well, Mom, it's all volunteers. You can't make a job out of that. She said, oh no, there are some people. It's not many, but there are some folks that kind of help organize and, give some leadership. And so I looked into it. And in 1997, I became a district executive in Georgia, in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta, and kind of on a lark. It was intended to be kind of 2 years and then an MBA and a real job. And what I found after about 2 years was it was a real job, challenging but rewarding, and I really enjoyed it. And I had kind of been promoted once at that point, and I thought to myself, you know what, this is fun. I like what I'm doing. I get to work with some great people. The compensation's not going to make me rich, but it's fair, and I'm going to do this till it's not fun. So I worked in 2 local scouting councils in Georgia and then 2 in Texas before coming to Phoenix in 2018 to really kind of turn around scouting here. We had some challenges here organizationally, and so I was brought in from Texas to kind of make some pretty big changes. And then, of course, we didn't anticipate some of the headwinds we'd worked through over the last 6 years, but we've come through an awful lot. And I still have a lot of fun. The last couple of years have been a little bit more challenging, but I'll tell you what really keeps me excited is the volunteer group that I get to work with at all levels. The local scoutmaster or den leader who's working with a scout troop or a cub pack, but also the volunteers that work at what we call the council level, our board of directors and those other folks who volunteer to help make the community better. And what we do, I would say, and I often say, is we are changing the future of Arizona through scouting, and that's pretty rewarding for me.
Heck yeah. Love it. So you mentioned that you'll keep doing it as long as it's fun. I think it's incredibly rewarding. The impact you're having must give your job, I think, a lot more purpose than a lot of people's.
It really does. In the brief time I worked in banking, I'd go home and had great banker's hours, and I'd get home in the afternoon and think to myself, well, I wonder if I enriched some person stockholder by a half a cent today, right? Just no reward there. But everything that I do today, and now for 27 years, sometimes, admittedly, it's indirectly, but it ultimately results in we're giving more kids the opportunity to become better versions of themselves, learn values like leadership and character, self-confidence, and life skills. How can you not go to bed at night feeling good about that? There's not
right. Absolutely. Yeah, it's something that has had a big impact on us. I mentioned before our call that my son is wrapping up his scouting and adventure right now, which is awesome. And last night we were at his lacrosse game. My wife told me that she was gonna be more proactive, even though he's leaving. She's gonna run the first aid, merit badge, and the other stuff, and help out more in the future, which is awesome.
Yeah, one of the things I think that's a perfect example of how people that get involved in scouting see the value of it, and they, we talk with philanthropy, we talk about reciprocity. And there's different ways to define reciprocity, but your wife gets something in return for her volunteerism, and since I would suspect it's something like a good feeling, a warmth that she's passing along skills and learnings that will make the future better. And that's pretty powerful. And we see people in scouting often stay involved for many years after their kids have left. My youngest brother's 42 years old. My parents are still active scouting volunteers back in Georgia.
Excellent. Right. When we have our court of honors and stuff, we have family show up, and they often are incredibly active, right? It's something that once you get a taste for it, it's yeah, very powerful.
Yeah.
I forgot what I was going to say now. You reminded me of something. It'll come back to me. But
Yeah.
in terms of growing the impact here in Phoenix, you're focused mostly on the Phoenix market. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I lead
Or
Grand
Arizona,
Canyon
sorry.
Council. Yeah, so I lead Grand Canyon Council, which is one of 240 or so local scouting councils. Just very quickly, the way we're organized, the National Council, when we say Scouting America, formerly known as Boy Scouts of America, it's based in Texas. They own the IP, if you will, but they don't deliver the sales and service aspect of the organization. That's handled through a network of local scouting councils. So Grand Canyon Council, that I lead as the Scout Executive and CEO, covers most of the state of Arizona. Oversimplifying a little bit, but basically everything except for right around Tucson. So Yuma, Safford, Casa Grande, through the Phoenix Metro, all the way Prescott, Flag up to the Utah state line. So pretty big area. And our mission at the council level is really to grow and support scouting at the local level. What does that mean practically speaking? We want to make sure that there is a cub pack, a scout troop, a venturing crew, reasonably close to every kid who might want to be a member of scouting. And then the other thing that aligns closely to that is our job is to ensure that every kid's invited and knows they're welcome and invited to be a scout. So one of the things I hate is when I meet someone, it's typically an adult, and they say, well, I always wanted to be a scout, but there wasn't a troop nearby, or nobody invited me. And I think everybody benefits from scouting and become better versions of themselves. But I realize scouting is not for everybody, and maybe another activity organization is the fit for some kids. That's awesome. Wherever a kid can plug in and really dig in deep, they're going to be better versions. They're going to be better off in the long run. But we want to make sure every kid knows that they're invited.
For sure. You reminded me of what I was trying to say before. Is not only does it have a big benefit for you and the kids, but the generational, why you stay around is because these are the people who are going to be taking care of you someday.
You're right. Yeah. So, yeah, for sure. And it occurs to me, another reason people stick around, scouting's a special place. You're among people who share a set of values. It's like being a part of other communities, maybe a church community or other communities that we identify with, but it's a really good community of people that care about each other, that lift each other up. And I again, going back to this reciprocity, I think when people stick around at scouting, it's because they're getting something that really makes them feel good about being among people who have a similar set of values.
Sure. I think we're all growing, right, through the process, and it's incredibly special. Before we get into the accessibility, you were talking about locations and making sure that everybody has the option. We'll talk more about that and other aspects of that. But first, just the knowledge, right? A lot of people in this day and age, I've had some people go, "Oh, they're still doing that?" What? And for my son's Eagle project, we went to one of the Home Depots we went to. We talked to the manager and trying to get support for your project sometimes. And we had one who said, yeah, what's an Eagle Scout and what's all, and yeah. So then there were people in line around us going, I was all right, all being supportive and stuff. It was just funny that anyway. So it's been quite a mix anyway nowadays. And so can you speak to that challenge right now of awareness?
Yeah. I would tell you that scouting and the program that we deliver to kids and the experiences they have is as amazing as it has ever been. And the values haven't changed. Some of the activities and some of the programs and badges have certainly changed with society. But we organizationally probably are lagging in our evolution. And I would tell you that we have relied on for decades this assumption, well, everybody knows who the Boy Scouts are.
Right.
And you just proved the fact, right? Not everybody does. And as our society continues to become increasingly diverse, pluralistic or whatnot, we have more and more people who don't know about scouting, or maybe they know about scouting in a country different from the United States, where it's different. Some parts of the country, it's compulsory. Some parts of the world, it's compulsory. Other places, it's only for the elite or the people who are particularly wealthy. And here it's for everybody. And so there's an education opportunity. And so we've relied on this assumption that everyone knows who the Scouts are. And so here in Arizona, really about 4 years ago, we dug in deep and said, that's not acceptable. We have to ensure that we know how to get the word out and really work on our marketing muscle, our marketing toolkit. And we partnered with one of the local PR firms to help us do some research through Arizona State to really find out what is the awareness level among specifically families across Arizona who have elementary school age children in the home. And what we heard largely was, we think we know, we've heard of Scouts, we think they're a good thing. We don't really know much, and we've never been invited to join. And so we've really been actively working to target that, using a variety of media to get the word out, online, virtual. We've even tried some of these mailers you get at home with the different coupons and whatnot. We've tried a variety of things to really just increase the level of awareness. And it's worked. It's been working since the COVID pandemic. We've actually grown our Cub Scout membership, which is our primary focus on new youth, every year since the COVID pandemic. So it's working, and but we continue to have work to do. There are still people that don't know about scouting.
Okay. In terms of so let me go back and tell a little bit of my son's story. Is he started with his Mormon friends, and they had a pack, a Cub Scout pack at their ward, and so he went there for the first 2 years, and then when they shifted, the LDS church shifted, he moved to a different pack, which was a little bigger and also very good. They're both awesome. The source of these, right? Is it do you get a lot through churches and schools, or is it what percentage is the best source in a marketing sense?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so one thing that's helpful to know is that our culturally we are collaborative based at our core. So Grand Canyon Council, we don't directly run scout troops. You mentioned your son's been a scout for a few years and has had a great experience. We don't run his scout troop. We partner with community organizations. They're often churches, other organizations of faith, but it's also HOAs, civic clubs like Elks, American Legion, Rotary, Kiwanis. We actually, in a few cases, partner with for-profit businesses. Really, any legal entity, in shorthand, anybody that's current with the State Corporation Commission can be a partner. We use the word charter organization, and use scouting as a program for the kids in the local community. And so, I would say probably roughly 2/3 of our partners are faith-based organizations. Okay. But we're not limited to that. And we've seen here in the last few years a real uptick in our partnerships with American Legion. They have realized that they are uniquely positioned through their resources to be an excellent partner to work with us. And one of the things that's important to them is helping to raise young people and give them opportunities that will help them become the best citizens for all of us to.
Right. Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because that's kind of why I've, as a kid, idolized Scouts, was because growing up, that they're presidents and astronauts and were first man on the moon. All this stuff was like, these guys are rock stars in my mind. First, I think there's some new data about supporting the success of Scouts and people who've been in Scouts, but besides the core data, right? What's the general marketing or impression of Scouts historically, right, through the years? Like I was talking about, has it gone down and then is it back up again, or is it just an all-time low, or where is that?
Yeah, so at the national level, they do some research on sort of the brand awareness and the brand strength of scouting, and the awareness has been dipping kind of consistently, and that aligns to what we've learned here in Arizona. Again, as society changes and we've relied on outdated thoughts about who knows about scouting and not really invested in the marketing.
And the digital influences on people's attention and activity in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would tell you that when the national organization went through its Chapter 11 reorganization a few years ago to deal with and reconcile the historic incidences of sexual abuse that had happened in scouting, we saw a real hit because there was a lot of information out in media that highlighted some really horrible things that had happened in the past. And so we're coming back from that. You mentioned screens. We spend so much time, our children spend so much time in front of computer screens, phones, tablets, televisions. And that's one of the things we're seeing, sort of a bounce back effect, I would say, from many of the parents that say, hey, I realize there's a value in education that takes place outdoors. There are learnings that take place there that don't take place anywhere else. I need some balance for my kid. I need them to get out of the den, away from these screens. One of the things that we've really seen as a result of COVID that's accelerated this time behind screens is the isolation. We're seeing social skills are not as advanced as we typically have seen at people at a certain age. And scouting is a great example of that. Interestingly, we don't talk a lot about the adult impact that we have through scouting. The parents of scouts and, of course, the leaders of scouts come together, build friendships, build networks, and scouting really increases the fabric of the community at the adult level, and helps adults that are feeling isolated and maybe don't have the friend network. And, many of us have heard this concept that we used to know all of our neighbors around, and many of us don't know as many of the neighbors as we really feel like we ought to. Scouting is one of the things that we can do as adults, as parents, that really can help some of that for ourselves and our own sort of mental and well-being as well.
Yep. And the social interactions in your community and all that, I'll add up. They're great. Okay, so I have all sorts of interesting thoughts. I'm very excited about all this. Let's talk mostly about the recent data, right? Because the idea I had of scouts was these are all super outgoing, competent achievers. And yes, COVID really it hurt our troop specifically at the time, right? Because people couldn't get together and go out and do all their stuff anymore. They're trying to do stuff online, and that was a hard way to try to do scouting. But it's nice to hear there's a rebound, right? And that all the people who are being less active and socially as well as geographically, that there's a rebound for that, because it's awesome. And you're right, there's a lot of lessons you can only learn by doing and getting outside and interacting with the real world. And a lot of these life lessons, I see a lot of kids now saying, I'm adulting in things that are stuff that we took for granted back in the day, right? Like cooking your own meals or repairing your clothes if they tear and all sorts of things. Staying warm, surviving if you're trapped outside.
Yeah.
Right. All that stuff. But there's a lot of evidence that shows how important scouting is for individual health, mentally, and financial success, all sorts of things like that. Can you speak to some of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've worked in scouting for 27 years, was a scout growing up, and anecdotally, I can tell you that people that are involved in scouting and that are involved in scouting longer are much more likely to be successful in life. Every time I've ever spoken to a group of successful people, it's a civic club, business leadership type group.
Yep.
You say, hey, how many of y'all were involved in scouting? 80% of the hand, right? And it just proves, but importantly, we actually have research now. Tufts University back east did some research. It's been a few years ago now, but peer-reviewed research, published research that confirms what we've known anecdotally, that kids who are in scouting are better off finishing high school, finishing college or trade school or whatever comes after, educationally after high school for them, more likely to have positive relationships with people around them, whether they're family, loved ones, coworkers, more likely to keep jobs, more likely to be good employees, employers, spouses, parents, right? All of these things that I think generally we want for our children. It's confirmed, research-based, scouting accomplishes these things. And it's a direct correlation. The longer you're in scouting, the better the outcomes are. An interesting side effect or learning that came out of the research, they looked at not only kids involved in scouting, but they looked at kids involved in sports, kids involved not in scouting, not in sports, and kids that did both. And so these tremendous outcomes, kids involved in scouting, very good, similar but not the same outcomes, kids involved in sports, not as strong, not as big a statistical difference. But the kids that did a sport and scouting together were light years ahead of everybody.
Wow.
And so that's the thing I tell parents. I tell my brothers who have kids, I say, hey, get your kid into a scout troop and pick a sport. Doesn't matter what the sport is, baseball, football, basketball, lacrosse, soccer, whatever. But have them do one of each. And you are best positioning the kid for a much better version of whoever they might be otherwise.
Oh, that's gold. Absolutely, Andy. That should be on every billboard for scouts, right? That's enough. Every parent wants what's best for their kid,
Absolutely.
wants their kid to live up to as much of their potential as they can, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting. A moment ago, you said perception of scouts, high achievers, and all this, and they are. but we take kids wherever they are and help them become a better version of themselves.
Right.
Every scout's not going to be the president of the United States, of course, but they're going to be in better position for whatever comes next for them. In fact, one of the phrases, one of the sort of mottos we've been using in some of our materials is discover your path, because scouting will help each kid figure out where the next place, what their trajectory is going to be. Some CEO of some company, some whatever they might do, they're going to be better at it and better positioned for success being involved in scouting.
For sure. And again, this is anecdotal, but from my own experience, for example, my son's finishing his Eagle right now, and that I'm proud. I've been working on the project with him and stuff, and sharing that with people. People come out of the woodwork everywhere. Oh yeah, I was a scout. And I hang out with some pretty successful people nowadays, so I've been fortunate enough to grow to that level. And sure enough, there's a bunch of them here.
Yeah. So and what a network! What a network! Yeah, that's awesome.
Please, Andy, tell us about the accessibility changes in the greater program, but also here locally.
Absolutely. So, scouting started in 1910 with the Boy Scout program, and it was for boys. And over the years, we added Cub Scouts, we added Venturers, we added Explorers, we added Sea Scouts. Venturers, Sea Scouts, and Explorers served girls and boys. They've been co-ed for many, many decades. About 10 years ago, the organization started looking and said, hey, who are we serving and who are we not serving? Because we haven't always welcomed all kids into scouting. And we realized that there's nothing in the program that's gender specific. There's even the personal fitness merit badge. You might think, well, there's some physical differences between men and women. Absolutely. But the merit badge has them set a base level of their fitness, learn about fitness, and then over the course of a period of time, I think it's 90 days, they practice and train to become better at sit-ups, push-ups, running, whatever the fitness measurements might be, which obviously not gender specific. So it's not that they have to do so many sit-ups in a minute. It's, hey, improve and grow and become a better version of yourself, in this case, physically. And so really, it's imperative that we get the word out through our marketing and let everybody know any kid who wants to be a scout is welcome. If they are willing to put their hand up in the scout sign and pledge to do their best living up to the values of the Scout Oath and Scout Law, we've got a place for them. Alongside that, one of the projects, it's an ongoing thing, right? For us is to ensure that there is a pack, troop, and crew reasonably close to every kid in the state of Arizona who might want to be a scout. And so about 85% of our scouts are in Phoenix Metro, about 85% of our population's in Phoenix Metro. So that kind of makes sense. But we still have some pockets. I became aware of this concept of scout food deserts when I lived in Dallas. There are parts of cities where residents don't have access to fresh grocery stores, right? They can go to a convenience store or maybe a fast food, but not, real healthy kind of stuff at a reasonable price. And so we've taken that approach or that concept to scouting deserts. And that's one of the things that we are continually looking at is wherever there is population, do we have a Cub Pack nearby, a scout troop right there in that community, so that when a scout hears about scouting and says, hey, parent, I'd like to do this. I want to be a scout. It's not overly difficult for them to participate. Right. They can just right in the corner into a local church or, whatever location to be a scout.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. The challenge is obviously there's a bunch, I'm sure, but just getting the parents, the volunteers, enough kids to keep it fun and so forth. But that's awesome. I will continue to support that as well. So if you don't mind, some of the pushback to that has been kind of the culture lately and stuff is trying to say that boys and girls are the same, and they're like, well, no, they're still different, right?
They're still different.
Yeah, the studies are pretty clear that, and when it comes to merit badges, anyways, what I was thinking is, so guys historically like stuff, right? Like our toys, right? Guys are more prone to be engineers, women are more social, they're more prone to be nurses or something. But there's exceptions to both and all that stuff. But the badges themselves are like you said, they're pretty, I guess non-sexist. I don't have a better term. You probably have used to talk about this.
They're not gender-based, right?
Yeah.
And, certain badges are required ultimately to become an Eagle Scout, like camping and first aid and citizenship in the community and citizenship in society. And there's nothing gender based about that. And
Right.
in total, there are, I think it's about 140 merit badges, and there's plenty to interest a kid. Some are engineering and botany and chemistry, and materials, composite materials. I mean, there's some really modern ones, and we also have basketry and leatherworking and wood carving, and so a scout, regardless of their interests, I think can easily find some badges that will go, hey, I'd like to learn about that. One of my favorite things to do is meet someone an adult, and find out that they're in a profession because they were a scout and they earned the merit badge in that.
Right.
And it's that's super cool, very validating. I'm like, yes.
Right.
But in some cases, kids learn dentistry merit badge and they go, you know what? I never want to be a dentist. I don't want to stick my fingers in someone's mouth, right? So, but that learning is occurring at 14, 15, 16.
That's huge.
As opposed to maybe when they've gone to dental school, spent time, resources, money in something that maybe isn't a lifelong passion.
Right. Okay. Great stuff. Great stuff, Andy. Thank you. So, as we sort of wrap this up, I have a reflection question I like to ask people: is what do you wish you would have known sooner about success earlier in your career?
Wow, that's a pretty deep question. And you didn't pre-tease me with that one before we started. So give me just a moment to think, what do I wish I knew sooner about success? I would say that I've been a self-starter, self-motivator, figure things out on my own type person. I'm kind of wired that way. And as I have gotten older, I've realized that learning from those around me who have gone the path ahead is pretty valuable and pretty enriching to have those conversations and to know people who are 10 years older, 20 years older, 30 years older, and to really absorb their experiences. And what we're doing today in whatever walk of life we're in is not the same as it was 10 years ago. There are differences, but there is wisdom that has passed from generation to generation in those experiences. And there are learnings that are still applicable, even though 10 years ago we didn't have AI or whatever it might be. So yeah, I would say for me personally, being open to learning from those around me, especially those who are older, who have an experience. I probably would have saved a little bit of frustration over the years, maybe had I had that learning younger in my career.
Okay. Very good answer. Thank you. Yeah, finding proper mentors, that kind of relates to scouting as well, right? And
absolutely.
And there's no reason to reinvent the wheel most of the time.
You're exactly right. Yeah, and it's interesting. Technology changes, society changes, but people don't change. An 11-year-old boy, 11-year-old girl is not materially any different than 40 years ago, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, right? And so their development, their stages of growth and all that. And scouting's been now for 115 years, just a tremendous asset to help parents and help our communities grow our young people into the kind of citizens that we want to all live beside.
Excellent. Okay, so Andy, if people would like to connect with you or learn more about scouting in their area, what should they do?
Yeah, so the website scoutingaz.org is the place to go. Contacts for all of our folks who are involved in leading scouting in Arizona are on there. Resources, how to get involved, everything's right there, scoutingaz.org. And I'd love to hear and meet others who have an interest in connecting or reconnecting with scouting.
Excellent. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. Thank you very much, Andy Price, for joining me today. We appreciate you sharing your story and insights into success and impact here in Phoenix and in scouting. It's one of the biggest and most exciting podcasts I've done. I really think that this is amongst the most impactful, hands down. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for having me.
Inspired by our guests? Visit PhoenixProsperityPodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.